Future Ready Visionaries for New Tomorrows. Today we are speaking with a fantastic person. When I was composing this Future Ready Summit, I'd been figuring out all these different people I wanted to interview, and then I had an epiphany. I couldn't possibly do a Future Ready Summit without speaking to an expert about children and childhood, two components of our lives that create our futures and how we experience our lives. How we experience our childhood informs how we are going to be in our lives, in our relationships, what kind of parents we're going to become, and in turn, what kind of children we're going to raise. So today we're going to talk to Marion Rose, Dr. Marion Rose, a trained psychotherapist and an aware parenting level 2 instructor, and talk to her about what kind of awareness do we need to inhabit in our own lives to be great parents so that we can create the futures through consciousness in the way that we relate to our children. And as we have this conversation about children, we in turn will look at our own childhood. How can we look at our own childhood so that we can create the healing, the balance, and feel a life that is full of possibility, prosperity, and positivity? So without further ado, welcome and thank you, Marion Rose, for joining us today.
Oh, thanks so much, Navjeet. It's lovely to be here.
Great. So could you tell us a little bit about what we mean when we say aware parenting?
Okay, so aware parenting was developed by a woman called Aletha Salter. She's a Swiss-American. She lives in California. And she was a teenager in the 60s, 70s, in that whole human potential movement that was really taking off at that time. And she went to lots of groups, and there was so much going on there around processing around our own childhood. So that was really happening. Her background was developmental psychology. She worked with Piaget, so anyone who knows their developmental psychology, you know him. And when she had her children, or her first child, she really wanted them to grow up so that they didn't need to go into therapy when they were adults. She wanted them to actually help them heal and process as they went along. And she really developed this approach, which some of it comes from co-counselling. I don't know if you know of that. So it's really this idea that babies coming to the world actually with all the resource and tools they need to actually heal from any stressful or traumatic experiences. So not only can we do everything we can to be aware and present, meet their needs, understand them, but they have these amazing inbuilt capacities to heal from birth onwards. Unfortunately, we don't, in our culture, we often don't understand those processes, so we're often working against them.
Right. When you say with babies, I know that you did a lot of research and studying when you were studying psychology, working with mothers and birth and so on.
Yes.
Did you find that what kind of awareness do babies have, and how much of an impact does the mother have in the birth experience? How much does that impact the baby?
Yeah, so it's pretty well known now. The pre and perinatal psychology also been going on since the 50s, 60s. That really, right from conception onwards, babies are actually sentient beings, and they're taking in information, and it is influencing them. They're learning. They're trying to make sense of the world, and they're already creating beliefs and ways of being through what they experience. So I think it's pretty much there's lots of science and studies that show this in birth and the early period after birth are having big impacts.
Do you think that it goes the other way? The babies may be teaching us as they are in utero and conceived and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I love that. I really think the way I often talk about babies and children is that they're like magnets. So they're constantly drawing us forth to evolve more. So every little piece in us that was left behind or that was incomplete or we had painful or traumatic experiences, babies and children will magnetize those to be shifted.
I love that. It's pretty amazing, and I want to talk a little bit more about something that you wrote on your website around that. Let's talk a little bit about how it is that, how you relate to parents versus child. Like, what's your approach when you're working with a parent in terms of aware parenting, and what you're doing when you're working with a child?
So really what I aim to do when I'm working with parents is I'm aiming to help them shift in the same ways that I'm wanting to help them be with their babies and children, because, for example, we often want to bring our children up without punishments and rewards. But as parents, often that still so many parents, they're still running this, I'm not good enough, or I should be this, or, I didn't do that right. So actually, it's also about us really shifting those old ways of being. It's 3,000 years of those kind of ways of thinking. But if we're trying to be like that towards our babies and children, we really need to start shifting those in ourselves. So I really aim to offer them, teach by offering what I want them to be able to offer their little ones.
Fantastic. I noticed that sometimes some parents will say, oh, I've heard other parents say, don't do what the child is saying, they're just trying to manipulate you. Or that the baby's crying because it's trying to manipulate you. What would you say to that?
Yeah. So again, these are just really, really old belief patterns. I often say that we're still kind of coming back from those very, very old kind of Christian ways, in a way that, not against Christianity, but those ways of thinking that we come into the world sinful, and that we need to learn by kind of conditioning and learning and punishments and rewards. Really, it's still that, those old behaviourist models that we need to learn to be loving beings. Whereas what I love about aware parenting, where I come from, is that I believe that we are love. That we love to, I call it the 3 C's, we love to connect, cooperate and contribute, and that's our true nature. And what happens is we have painful experiences, and they start to kind of stick on us. And so when our babies are, not sleeping through the night, waking up all the time, or our toddlers are biting or hitting, or our 5-year-old is swearing, that really they don't need us to kind of train them to be loving people. They actually need our help. They need love, connection, and they need help with actually releasing the stuff that's on top, which is preventing their true light from shining.
So what would you say, for example, if you could give us one example of a way to help a child to release a negative behavior or patterning, what would you recommend to a parent who's very frustrated, let's say?
Yeah. So the way I see it is there's 3 ways to help little ones release, and us it's the same too. It's always connection. There's also connection plus laughter, or connection plus crying. So laughter releases feelings such as frustration and helplessness, which are very common actually in all children, but especially 2, 3, 4-year-olds. That actually releases all kinds of feelings. Fear. Have you ever had a kind of a scary experience and you find yourself kind of laughing? You've ever had that, but laughter actually releases fear from the body. So actually, more laughter actually helps our little ones. And crying. So crying and tantrums are actually one of the other most amazing release mechanisms. And there are many ways we can help our children do more crying and tantruming. It's kind of the opposite of what we would normally think. And one is actually seeing all the ways that we're actually stopping that happening.
So it gets built up.
Yes. Yeah. So, and they also develop all kinds of patterns from us about how to repress feelings. We call them control patterns.
Right.
So part again, it's coming back to us. Where are we repressing our feelings? Where are we looking at Facebook rather than actually really feeling what's going on for us? Where are we eating or drinking or whatever it may be? And the more we can become present with what's really going on for us, then we can really be present for them. And see when they're starting to do those kind of behaviours, which they learnt from us. And those kind of behaviours, maybe it'll either be eating, they want to eat when they're upset, or they may be running around when they're actually upset because we've rocked and jiggled them perhaps, or just pushed them in the stroller or something when they're upset. Or they'll distract themselves, so they'll also want to be on an iPad, or they'll want to, please play with me. So and we can always tell that there's this quality of release required because there's an urgency.
Yeah.
It's like us, when it was like, I really need another another piece of chocolate.
Right.
When there's the urgency in a
Right.
child, they're going, I really need the iPad, or I really
Right.
need
Your
another
attention.
What they really need is connection and release in that
Connection
moment.
and release, yeah.
So the other thing we can go in is what I call loving limits. So loving limits, again, it's a very different way of looking at limits. The idea behind loving limits is that we're wanting to stop that behaviour. So it may be the wanting the iPad or the 10th biscuit, but it may also be behaviours such as hitting or biting or throwing things, or all those kind of behaviours that we find really annoying. So those would be acting out behaviours. So we also want to stop those, not to just stop the behaviour, but to help them actually release the feelings that are underneath. And we would be set a loving limit, which would be it's always empathy paired with a limit. So I can give you an example. If it's 10 biscuits, I want another biscuit. We can give the empathy first and then the limit. So the empathy would be, I know you really would love another biscuit, sweetheart. You really love those biscuits. And then the limit, which is something like, and I'm not going to let you have any more. and then it may be more empathy. Yes, right. I really want more, because then they might start going, it's not really about the biscuits.
Right. It just needs to, and to not be afraid of that release that's happening when it happens.
Exactly, because that's actually what's really underlying that. It's like us with Facebook. We don't really want to be on Facebook. We actually want to be connected with ourselves.
Yeah, it's fascinating how with social media you can be on the computer or your iPhone or whatever, and then your child is wanting attention. That transition from being like this to from your child, you have to gauge your own energy, because otherwise you will transmit that frustration to your child, or that leave me alone, I'm busy energy, because this social media thing can be like this insatiable monster if we're not careful.
Yes.
And then
yes.
Go ahead.
Totally. And I think it's the same. It's like most things, they can be something that meets an immediate need, or it can be a way where we're basically dissociating, spacing out, disconnecting.
Exactly. And
it's really finding that discernment, isn't it, between when is this actually really meeting a need here, and when am I actually using it to go,
Oh, you have to become really honest with yourself, I think, before you can start saying the kid is doing this or they're doing that. You have to really be honest, and this brings us to that presence that you talk about a great deal in your work, is that we have to be present with ourselves, present to our emotions, our desires, our needs, comfortable or uncomfortable, fear or joy or repression of joy. Without that presence, we can't really raise present children. And then, teenagers, which becomes much more amplified and less access for us to communicate with them.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I love about parenting. I think it's kind of, for me, like the biggest psychospiritual journey possible, if we're really willing to take it.
Yeah.
Because every little place where they're doing that, I want the iPad or whatever, there's bound to be a place in us where we're also using social media in that way. And
I say that. I want my computer, my Facebook now. Got to message someone.
Exactly.
But I think if we can also, like you were saying, I was reading this on your website about laughter and play. Some of the examples that you were giving were like, embodying the behavior that you're trying to get your child to do something. Doing that yourself really kind of highlights how limiting and how controlling that situation is, and how it must appear to the child if you want them to eat something and you're like, come on, just one more mouthful, and then you can have your cookie or something like that. Playing that out through play, and maybe inviting your child to play with you. One, it shows you that kind of the level of the limitedness, and two, like you said, the humor and the laughter can help you release perhaps some subconscious patterns that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we get so serious often as parents.
Yes.
You remember that? How before kids you're like, and we kind of think we need to get serious.
Yes.
I often think that the more serious we're getting, the less connected we are with ourselves and with them. Yeah. And actually, when we, what I really like is this way of thinking about parenting as like intimacy. And what often happens in our culture is we do everything to avoid the intimate places, which is usually the the tenderness, the joy, the grief and sadness, all that most aliveness, we kind of sidestep that. And what our children are constantly doing is inviting us through their behaviour to actually really go right in there to connect and either to be with, whether it's the absolute wonder and delight of just being alive, or grief and sadness or confusion or whatever it may be. They're constantly inviting us to go to that intimate space with them.
Right. It's almost as if they are alive with that currency, know, that they are in that present state or connected to their emotion, happy, sad, but it's immediate. And without repression, it's just this movement that just happens.
Exactly.
Yeah. One of the things that you talked about is that you said that our children constantly offering us information about steps we can make in our own lives, which will also have profound effects in their lives. We need to slow down, listen to these often literal messages. I love that they are, the children aren't saying it in a really clever, profound, intellectually discerned way. They just really will say it literally what they mean. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, so this comes, it's congruent with aware parenting, but this comes from a different paradigm that I bring in, which is from the Field Project. I'm trained as a facilitator with them, and so the way they see it is that the children are like messengers. So they're completely tuned into the field, to the consciousness of all that is. They're still, we've become less connected consciously with that. So they are literally bringing in these very obvious messages. Like I remember once with a session with a woman, and her daughter kept bringing in peas in a bowl. She kept bringing peas in a bowl. And she really got it. It was about peace. It was about finding peace. So often it's a real literal play on even the words. I remember once as well, my son, we were in a big shop, and he went in and he wanted, it was Easter, and he wanted the biggest rabbit. So it was a massive rabbit and the biggest chocolate bar, which happened to be called Top Deck. I don't know if you have that there. And he was bringing them to me, and I was like, I don't really want to buy this stuff for you. But what I really saw actually in the moment was I was playing around a lot with myself, is how big can I be, and can I, beliefs about, being top and bottom and all that kind of stuff. And he was just constantly showing this to me in those kind of ways. And often, like in that example, it's easy for us to think they're doing something wrong when they keep inviting these kind of messages to us.
I oftentimes feel after I've gone through a day, and I'm just reviewing, and we're having, putting him to bed, and we're cuddling, we've had story time, and I'm feeling his amazing energy, this loving, so open child. And I think about the times in the day when I've been short-tempered or just shut him down, because what I thought was needed to happen was the way to go. What would you offer to those parents who, when they reflect on their behavior, they know that they haven't been the best that day, and they're carrying that guilt or that, oh God, I'm not a good parent, I'm not making it? What would you say to them? To me.
Lots of self-compassion.
Yes.
Really, I think going back to what you were saying at the beginning, really, is that we were brought up in a very different paradigm. So we're straddling these two worlds. We're aiming to give our children something that we didn't really get because, our parents weren't in that stage of evolution. And our kids are going to evolve so far beyond us. When they have their kids, they'll be doing all this stuff that we didn't know about. What I really love is that shift, though. Again, it's shifting the way we are with our feelings. So when we've done something that we regret, is instead of going for the guilt, which is I should have done something differently, or I'm bad, or I'm wrong, or why aren't they a better mum, is actually dropping it into, again, the way we want to be with them is just compassion and listening to the sadness and the mourning. I'm mourning that in that moment I didn't know what else to do, or I couldn't find any other resources, or I wasn't where I wanted to be.
I read somewhere that you talked about that it's an opportunity of learning as well. So for instance, in that situation, as you were talking, I thought, one of the things that I can do, and I have been doing, and which is that I say, okay, you know that maybe you could have listened then, and you didn't. And
Yes.
so tomorrow, you're going to have the same opportunity without a shadow of a doubt. That's a wonderful thing about
Oh,
kids. They allow repeat opportunities for learning. So tomorrow,
about 20 years.
yeah, exactly. So tomorrow, when that situation is happening,
Yes.
what would you like it to be instead? Where would you like to be in your heart? And I really feel into myself and just let that lovingness and that sense of expansive self coming with tenderness and real interest and
Yes.
stopping everything else and just committing to that. And I've noticed that since I've really, because I was having this, transitional period between the Facebook and the social media and learning it and it taking a lot of my time and the kind of the addictive nature of it, that
Yes.
I could see that I was really falling short in my day with my son. And so commitment came up and I said, okay, so I'm actually committed to, why am I doing all of this? To raise a great son. This is what I'm really excited about. So each time I have that opportunity to say, okay, I will do it differently. And when I do, I'm really proud of myself because the whole experience is very different. For him, I look at him and the level of love and that kind of inner smile that comes on his face when I'm actually looking at him and seeing him, there's nothing quite like that, because then you know that you're really meeting them. They're always on. They're looking for you to see that.
Exactly. Yeah, I see. Even babies. You just see it like here. I mean, they're not here in a conscious way, but they're totally here.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they're looking around to go, okay, who else is here? Is
Yeah.
anyone else here?
Yeah.
And that becomes slightly dulled down as they get older, but they're still, isn't it? Children, it's like, okay, are you here? Are you going to meet me here? Are you going to meet me here? And
Yes,
that's the
exactly.
challenge, isn't it, for us?
Yeah.
How many times can we choose that?
Exactly, and I think as we clear in my work too, when I'm working with clients, 99% of the time, without a shadow of a doubt, we are going to go into the childhood. We are going to look at what happened, because that's where so much of us, our spirit gets put out, it gets fragmented, we begin to dissociate, and it can happen right off the bat from the minute we're born, or even in utero. I have clients who have memories of being in utero and feeling suffocated or neglected or isolated.
Yeah.
And whether people say that's possible or not, it doesn't matter, because the emotional experience of that person is, as far as they can remember, they have felt that. And so that sets up a whole very fascinating biochemistry that becomes translated into emotional and physical attributes that then influence this world that we're living in. Yeah. And so
it's pretty amazing, isn't it?
It is, and I find it fascinating. So let's talk a little bit. We've talked a little bit about the childhood and so on. Let's talk about the potentials of what and why this movement, why awareness, parenting and field project facilitating and outlook. What is it going to do for us? What is it going to create? What kind of children's children? What kind of futures can we look forward to?
Yes, I really like the children's children, because I don't know about you, but when I first had my children, they're 12 and nearly 8 now, and I thought I was just going to be able to do all the stuff perfectly and do it to them. And there's so much about humility and self-compassion and coming up against every single edge that I've been finding. And I'm, still kind of fairly new at this, but 12 years. But really, what I see is every step that we make, however far we come, and no doubt our parents came from us, from their parents, but making that step is, any little bit that we've done differently. And I think often in this generation we're making big steps, and I think these kids are gonna take what they've been given and really run with it. So you imagine growing up with, okay, maybe we get grumpy and maybe we do things we don't mean to, but without conscious shaming, blaming, punishing, shutting down. Okay, we're doing that in our moments when we're feeling in our own stuff, but without that as a conscious thing, imagine that. Imagine
I know,
what
it's fascinating. And also that I think that maybe there's a difference here in terms of breaking the pattern, is that
Yes.
often I do this myself, is that if I am wrong or if I've hurt my son's feelings, I will show up and say I'm sorry
Yeah.
and lay claim to that bad behavior, to those bad manners or speaking too sharply, and
Yes.
helping them to realize that it's not them, but I'm the one who's in the quandary. It's not them. And I think just
Yes.
even that shift
Yeah.
can keep the spirit of the child intact, because then they can begin to differentiate, like, oh, that's just her stuff. It's not
Exactly.
me. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important, in terms of what we know about the brain now, and those first 7 years in particular, when really children, even if they are able to repress things, but they tend to make everything about themselves. That, I think that's where core beliefs come from. Mum's depressed or whatever, and they say, well, I've done something wrong, or I'm not loved, and that becomes a core belief.
Yeah.
So the more we can, still be, of course, not perfect in doing those kind of stuff, but as you say, saying to them, that wasn't you, that was me. I really think that makes a difference in terms of those core beliefs that they acquire.
Yeah. And what would you say about, how people say, well, it's not what you say to your child, it's what you model. But there's something else that you talk about. Could you share about that with us?
Yeah. So I think often a lot of, where we're coming from, this generation of parents now, is we're trying to protect our kids from the experiences that we had. But what happens is if we're trying to do something that's different, but actually we're still carrying the same core belief in ourselves,
right,
we don't often get what we think we're telling them. We might say, oh, you can really do that, or you're so competent, or whatever it is. Yeah. If we're still carrying around beliefs like, if I'm competent or great at something, I'll be crucified, or whatever it may be, they will be still getting the flavour of that. So that's the challenge. Like, how can we keep shifting these really core beliefs that we've been carrying around, so that they're really not carrying that energy?
Right. And I think part of the answer, when I really think about that, is really the happiness, being willing to have spontaneous joy, being willing to laugh uncontrollably, be willing to be silly, to fall flat on your face, to have that kind of loose space in yourself, so that it allows for children to kind of have expansion, because all of these activities through play and laughter and giggling and silliness, it just frees you up. There's no control there. No matter how much you try, you cannot control if you are laughing uncontrollably.
We're really meeting, in terms of what we're talking about, that meeting and the intimacy. When we're laughing together, when we're being goofy and silly and ridiculous, and going in that space together, or having a pillow fight, it's a meeting of equals. There's nothing else there.
Yes. And so how do you get people, parents, to be goofy and silly? Because children are very easy. They can, at the drop of a hat, they will do that. But what about parents who have a very structured idea of themselves and becoming more rigidified?
Yes, exactly. I think part of it is first of all giving the information. We're still coming away from that punishments and rewards paradigm, and I think partly it's the information that actually it's connection and laughter and crying if necessary to create. It helps them become children back again who want to connect and cooperate. They don't need more harshness and punishment and all that. They need more love, more joy, more release. So I think having that intellectual part first can help parents. It's like the work you're doing. It's really seeing the places in ourselves where we go, oh, play or laughter. Because, of course, play and laughter, like you're saying, it opens everything up. So if we're sitting on a bunch of pain and we start laughing, that pain is going to
it becomes transformed. And
so
it's not that scary thing, because in our conclusion of that experience, it was terrifying, it was alienating, it was isolating, your sense of self was squished. But if you could imagine something makes you laugh in that moment, all of those associations begin to dissolve. That frequency of the laughter completely vaporizes the lower vibrations of fear contraction.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I guess we need that willingness to stand on the edge where it feels like it's going to be the same as what it always was. Yeah. And
And from your Yes, and exactly. And from your writings, I can see that you're very willing to push yourself to that edge. What drives you to be so willing, would you say? Is it to kind of heal your own childhood? Is it having children and seeing that you want to meet them? What gets you going?
Yeah, and sometimes I'm really not as well. Like
Yeah,
everyone, I take the times I'm like, oh, I just can't, I don't want
sure.
to. But
But you
yeah, it
come
is.
back again,
It's
though. You come back. You might have that but then you're like, okay. So
yeah.
what makes you come back?
I think a new thing I've really got, and you might have read that too, is that really seeing that when we're feeling scared, it really means that we're at the edge of our known world, and we're
Right.
really actually challenging old beliefs about safety, because old beliefs, they're uncomfortable. We can stay in there forever because it feels known and familiar. So
Hmm.
actually, when we're feeling scared, it's actually often a great sign that we're actually stepping outside of those old ways of being. So that's something that really helps me to keep going when it's
Right.
like, okay, I'm going to keep going here because this is actually probably the
Yes.
right way to go
Right.
for me.
Right. So
That's one.
when you're spending time with your kids, what kind of things are they teaching you that you've learned because you've been practicing with them? You know, you're a good few years ahead of where I am with my child, and your training in this and your learning is in this. What would you say have been some really very valuable tools that they've imparted to you?
There's just so many. I don't know where I could start. My daughter who's 12. I just really see she's from a very young age, but I can see that she can see things that I can't see. I think that's one of the most beautiful
Mm-hmm.
gifts, that it's the humility, and I'm doing this stuff and teaching people, but actually she's living it really.
Mm-hmm.
She has it in her bones and in her
Mm.
being. I see how she is with babies and with animals and with other people, and she lives the quality of presence that she's gone over the bridge. She's kind of in a
Yeah.
new. I don't know. For me, that's kind of it's bittersweet, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I know in this lifetime, that's not my journey. I see
Yeah.
something. I think there's something about that. We do all these things for our kids really so that we can let them go. That's
Yes.
the kind of
I
bittersweetness about
know.
things.
I
We love
know.
them, we do all this stuff so that actually they can be these amazing free beings who live their own lives, and
Yeah.
I think that's sitting on that.
That's one of the most interesting experiences or lessons that I'm getting with my son is that sense of, as a parent, feeling that you can protect them or save them from harm or danger and so on. And in meditations, I get and I've had over the past few years is this sense of really releasing, instead of on a personal level, my son and my need to protect him and what can I do and feeling helpless and so on and so forth, is really
Yeah.
looking at it from a level of a pattern, a deep set belief system or patterning that says this is how we relate to children. When they get to a certain age, they're going to leave home and we're going to feel sad, we're going to feel this, and we set ourselves up for that. We set ourselves because culturally or because of the epoch that we're in, because of the way that our religions speak about it. We create this self-fulfilling prophecy, and I've been listening to myself, and one of the things that I hear on the one side saying, oh gosh, when he's grown up, when he goes to university, he's gonna da 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 da, and he's not gonna blah blah
It's,
blah 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 come home, or all these
yeah.
conversations. And then there's another part of me that's saying, you're gonna have such a great time. You're gonna do so many things. You're not going to be this pining mother, feeling like her life. There's no point to me anymore. And so
Yes.
it's been interesting to observe that letting go of that script that we feel we kind of begin to mimic
Yes.
because we're a parent now, and so this is what's going to happen, this is what's going to unfold. And I remember in this one particular meditation that I was having, focusing on my son Leo, and I was feeling sad. I envisioned this whole drama. What would happen should I die?
Mm,
Oh gosh, how awful it would be for Leo to lose a parent, and we're so close, and I was going on this story in my head. And then
yes.
I very clearly felt, I brought Leo's consciousness into the meditation, and he said to me, why are you projecting such negative futures on me? What makes you think that I wouldn't feel complete with your death?
Mm,
And I was like, oh. Like, why do I assume, why was I assuming that it would be devastating for him? It may not be. He may be at a level of understanding where it feels complete for him. It feels like, yeah, she's still part of the whole. I mean, that's his understanding, the way he has been brought up by myself and his father, is that when somebody dies, they just become part of the whole. They've just transformed. And so that we can miss them and everything, but there isn't anything wrong. And he already has that understanding in him. And so here I was trying to lay on this, as you said, it doesn't matter what we say or what we do, we project and we give them a flavor of a script that we are carrying ourselves. And so it's really fascinating to kind of see already, like for when he's going to college, he may or may not go to college, who knows what he's going to decide to do. But I was already like, oh, that moment, leaving the nest, empty nest syndrome. So you know, as much as it is about the past is also, you know, we kind of walk into certain scripts at different age that as we enter a different age. Let's talk a little bit about that future scripting and what future scripts are written for parents and for children.
Yeah, I mean, they all need to be rewritten, really, don't they?
Yes.
As you say, I mean, it's like where we've come from. It's the beliefs about babies and children they're still pretty, you know, that we're bad. We come into the world bad, and you know, life's about suffering, and we kind of get through it. Yes. But really, I love the kind of psycho-spiritual approach. Is that the whole of our life is a journey in consciousness, and that we, you know, that we come from spirit, and you know, halfway round, roughly, we start really, you know, disidentifying more from the personality and returning back into that more wider sense of who we are. And I think parenting is the amazing way to help us do that, because what else teaches us about service, about valuing our needs, but also giving up on our needs at many times, and really prioritizing them. I mean, there's so much in it that's a great gift for us. So as they kind of enter into their, you know, early adulthood, we enter into this next phase of our evolution, which I think parenthood has really equipped us for.
Yeah. So just to go into that future ready conversation, visionaries for new tomorrows, I would love to hear what you would consider an incredible future. What kind of emotions, places, homes, relationships are people having that you would love to belong to?
Okay. Well, I really see a world where we've really gone beyond those old, that whole paradigm of good, bad, punishment, reward, should, have to, guilt, shame, all that stuff, where we're really just knowing that we come from love, that we're compassionate with ourselves, with each other, with the trees and the sky and the planet, you know, that we really return to that. And I actually do see that happening as people, you know, we're in this kind of transition phase where we're pulled between that future and our past, but I really see that as a true possibility of compassion and actually doing what we're here to do.
Yeah. And in that future, what does your life look like? What are you doing? Are you still teaching? Are you laughing? Are you are you like wearing incredible costumes of light? What does that look like? What are you doing?
I would like to just do more teaching. I'd like to be going around the world teaching, but I'd like to be hanging out a lot on the beach and looking at the blue sky and just really enjoying life and just really celebrating being here each day, and really being much more in that rather than in the tension between the two worlds.
So let's focus on that, being in that experience. So what would enjoying life look like? Because that's partly what I want to do, is really talk about, like, let's generate some visions and sprinkle ideas so people say, oh, I like that one.
Yeah. Do you know what I love, and I'm sure you have it a lot too, is I've had times where I really am living this with my kids, where it's like, you know, they want to go and do something. Let's go on an adventure. I remember one day I said, I'm just going to follow what they want to do, and we went on this whole adventure around. Like, we live near Byron, and we went to parks, and we went on walks, and we found new places, and we ate ice cream, and it was a beautiful blue sky day, and we were all in love with being alive. For me, that's my kind of vision. Being in love with being alive. I think that's why we're really here, not other stuff.
I can really feel that transmission from you. I can see the painting behind you with the heart and that pink energy radiating out. And that's really what you stand for, is that being in love with life, and all the facilitating that you're doing is helping people move towards that. And of course, in turn, we as teachers, as healers, we get to heal ourselves. I mean, we never teach anything that we're not really learning ourselves, that we're learning ourselves, and we're not doing any healing where we're not being healed ourselves. I mean, that's just the truth, isn't it?
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. So Marion,
I love what's behind you as well. You know, it's
the cosmos in Russian.
In Russian.
The cosmos in Russian. So Marion, how can people contact you for all the amazing work that you're doing? You do one-on-one sessions with people, with parents. Do you work with kids as well when you're doing the one-on-one
I don't tend to work with kids because I think parents are the best people to
so basically
work
getting
with
them
kids.
on track.
Yes. Yeah, so parents, mostly parents, but I actually work with everyone, so I help with shifting core beliefs with anyone who's not a parent as well. My More Aware Parenting websites, my old one is parentingwithpresence.net.
Right.
And I have a new one coming up, which is marionrose.net, which will be more inclusive with all the different things I offer.
Right. And I think that anyone who goes to your site, there's tons of resources, from blog posts to articles to interviews, where there's a lot of juicy material that you can get and just begin to practice. Just even having the conversation about what it means to be a parent. What was it like for you to be a child? What did you want more of? That's one of the things that I always ask my clients is, what did you want more of as a child? And like you said on your site, I also feel it's true when I'm working with my clients, is they wanted to be connected, contacted, and heard, seen, listened to. Like they needed somebody to be present, an adult especially, to be present, to show them that what is that, do you think? Why do they need adults to do that?
The way I see it is the way we're seen when we're babies and children is the way we come to see ourselves. And I see there's two levels of seeing. One is the more kind of here and now seeing, which is, you know, I see that you're feeling upset right now. I see that you're feeling joy right now. The parents are able to be with the feeling level. But I also see that on a deeper level of seeing the being of the child. And for that we need to be in touch with our being. So then they get that sense of being mirrored on that much, much deeper level of I'm here, I'm here, I am more than my feelings. I'm here now.
Yeah, and what a sense of security and sense of that you can solidify, anchor into being here when you get that reflection from an adult. You know, one thing I just thought of when you were just saying that is that to have that same level of voice and presence to talk to ourselves with, you know, just talking the way that you were talking about with children, if we could begin to employ that same voice, I think that could be extremely healing for people too, to just say, okay, I know you're feeling this way.
Exactly. Yes.
You know, how can I contact myself?
Yes.
You know, so that we're not dependent on somebody else, our husband, our child, to give us that. But if we employed that same talking to ourselves, then we could perhaps heal a lot of the places where we feel disconnected or where we want to dissociate.
Absolutely. And I think that's the developmental journey, that we're deepening our connection with our deepest self that can do that, that is that. And often that's what happens with babies and children. If we're able to mirror that in them, they have that compassionate self witness. We're still developing ours, you know, through meditational work, whatever we're doing, so that we have that, I'm feeling upset right now, I'm feeling frustrated, rather than you're being bad, you shouldn't be doing, which is the internal voices. It's the true compassion of the heart.
Yes. I love it. And I just, on a final note, one of the things that gives me great joy is when my son will say something like, oh, that's so beautiful, or he'll say, how are you, sweetheart? And the way he says it isn't like he's trying to mimic. He really is wanting to extend that he's calling me a sweetheart. And I just love that. And that just, again, talking about that voice, the way, the intonation, that we're teaching our children how to communicate how we communicate to them teaches them how they can communicate back, and also it's developing that inner voice, how they speak to themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the most transformative thing,
Yeah.
isn't it? As you say, in terms of the world we create the world as a reflection of that inner voice. What how is that inner voice? Is it compassionate or is it harsh?
Yes.
The more compassionate we're being internally, the more we also experience that in the outer world. So it creates a different world in terms of the future visioning.
Yes.
Us having that compassionate inner voice creates a compassionate world.
Yes. Wow. Marion, thank you so much for these incredible insights and tips and stories that you've shared with us today. I'm sure that every person who listens to this, they're going to be touched, and they are going to reflect on what you've said, and they are in turn going to shift something, even if it's a small little thing in terms of how they speak to themselves, or how they remember and reflect on how they were treated. By being able to see all these different spaces, a shift is actually going to happen. And so I want to thank you for holding the space very beautifully and with this such tender heart that you are bringing. I want to thank you and feel very grateful that you're doing this work.
Thank you so much, Navdi. It's such a pleasure to talk to you, and I love what you're doing, and I love the quality that you bring into the world. So thank you so much. It's been great having a chat with you as well.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.